The Parliamentary Budget Officer, Yves Giroux, joins us now. Mr. Giroux, always a pleasure. So inflation 7.7, high prices at the pump, high prices at the grocery store. There is concern that Canada is facing a recession, even though we've had good growth. In your view, first of all, did the government anticipate this level of inflation?
I don't think so, because when we look at the budget that was tabled in April, there's no indication that the government had planned for high inflation. In fact, the government's own numbers show that inflation, by their own predictions, which are based on private sector economists, were not going anywhere near 7.7% for 2022 or even 2023. So the government had penciled in much lower inflation than that, and so had most private sector economists. So it's taking many people by surprise to see headline inflation at 7.7% as released by Statistics Canada this morning.
And I say that because last week the Finance Minister, Chrystia Freeland, said, you know, we have their affordability plan was everything that was already in the April budget. But just to be clear, affordability factors have changed since the assumptions in the budget. In other words, the inflation assumptions in the budget do not reflect the reality of today.
Well, that's true, but also budget 2022 looked at inflation over the entire year 2022, and the numbers that were released today are up to May. So it's not a picture for the full year. So there is still the possibility that inflation will be going down significantly between now and the end of the calendar year, which would allow budget projections to be more closely aligned with reality. But at this point, it's anybody's guess as to inflation will indeed go down significantly, or at least enough to be more aligned with budget predictions.
Gas prices are driving a lot of inflation for various reasons. The U.S. President Joe Biden now says he's considering a gas tax holiday, and he'd like to make that happen. If Canada did that, push for a holiday or a suspension of the gas tax, would that make a material difference to consumers and Canadians?
Well, it would certainly make a difference to Canadians, especially those who drive and need gas to power their vehicles. Whether that would be material is the big question. Personally, it depends how much of a decrease, but with price of gas that has gone from around $1, $1.20 a liter several months ago to $2, $2.20 a liter in many areas of the country now, reducing gas taxes by a couple of cents a liter would certainly be welcome, but whether or not it would be a material difference, I have my doubts about that, and whether it would also move the headline inflation number by a noticeable amount, it also remains to be seen. It depends the direction that other goods and services that we purchase, whether they would continue to move up or not. But certainly reducing gas taxes would not drop inflation. The 7.7% that we saw this morning would not go down significantly by a full percentage point or more, even if the government was to reduce or eliminate the gas tax.
Right, might make it better at the pump. I got less than a minute here, but your report today on the Trans Mountain Pipeline says that it's no longer a profitable undertaking, that it'll be a loss of $600 million. Can you just say what happened to this pipeline? What's the big loss here?
Well, the big loss stems mostly from the fact that construction costs for the expansion have gone from a few $1 billion to $12 billion, and now the most recent estimate by the builder puts the cost of the expansion at $21 billion. So if the cost of building the pipeline goes up, but the revenues will not go up commensurately. So it's the same pipeline that is being built. It just costs more to build the same thing. The profit over the lifetime of the pipeline is likely to be much lower, especially considering that the tolls that the operator can charge to oil producers is regulated. So because the cost of the extension goes up does not necessarily mean that all these costs can be recouped through higher tolling.
Wow. Losing money on that pipeline, that's a lot of money. But they can't write it off because, as you say, if they write it off, it would be a $14.4 billion loss. So maybe we're stuck with it. Parliamentary Budget Officer Yves Giroux. I always appreciate you joining us. I know you got lots more to say on everything, and we love having you back. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.